The picture looked innocent enough. A child's drawing, done in bright crayon strokes. A house, a tree, a smiling sun. But when the social worker leaned closer, her chest tightened. Something about the way the child had drawn the figures standing outside the home didn't sit right. Something about the small details, almost invisible at first glance, sent a chill racing down her spine. What could possibly be hiding inside that drawing? And why, when the girl was asked about it, did her hands begin to tremble? The story begins in Fairview, a quiet suburban town where the streets are lined with sycamore trees and the smell of freshly cut grass drifts in the air each morning. Sarah Collins, a 34-year-old social worker, has been serving the county for nearly a decade. She's passionate, deeply empathetic, and known among her colleagues for never treating her cases like paperwork. Every child, every family, feels personal to her. Sarah's office is small, tucked into the corner of the Fairview Family Resource Center. Stacks of files tower on her desk, coffee stains circle her notepad, and a small picture of her own daughter, Emily, sits in a silver frame beside the computer monitor. Emily is only 9, close in age to many of Sarah's cases, which makes her work all the more personal. On a gray Tuesday afternoon, Sarah was conducting intake assessments for children referred by local schools. One of them was Lily Bennett, an 8-year-old girl with wispy blonde hair tied into pigtails and wide blue eyes that seemed far older than her years. The referral note was vague, withdrawn behavior. Teacher concerned. Suggest evaluation. As part of the standard assessment, Sarah asked Lily to draw her home. It's a common exercise for child psychologists and social workers. Children often express what they can't say through drawings. At first, it seemed ordinary. A neat square house, a triangular roof, 2 windows, a door. But then Sarah noticed the figures. 3 stick figures stood outside. One was clearly Lily. She had written her name above it in large, uneven letters. Next to her was a taller figure with broad shoulders. Above that figure, Lily had scrawled Dad. The third figure, however, was strange. It stood apart from the other 2, smaller, and drawn in darker colors. Lily hadn't given it a name. The face was scribbled out completely. Sarah leaned gently toward Lily. "Can you tell me about this person?" she asked, pointing at the unnamed figure. Lily froze. Her crayon hovered in the air. Then she quickly shook her head. "I don't wanna," she whispered. Sarah made a note but didn't press. Instead, she moved on. Yet the unease gnawed at her. Later that week, Sarah visited Fairview Elementary to speak with Lily's teacher, Mrs. Walsh. The teacher described Lily as polite but often distracted, prone to staring out the window during lessons. Sometimes she would flinch if another child raised their voice. "She's different at dismissal," Mrs. Walsh added hesitantly. "When her dad comes to pick her up, she goes very quiet. Too quiet. It's like she shuts down." Sarah scribbled in her notebook again. Patterns. Warning signs. The second unsettling moment came during a home visit. Sarah arranged to meet Lily's father, Thomas Bennett, a 40-year-old mechanic with rough hands and a guarded demeanor. The Bennett home was neat, almost too neat. The air smelled faintly of bleach. No family photos hung on the walls, only generic paintings of landscapes. Thomas answered the door stiffly, wiping grease from his palms with a rag. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Lily's fine," he said before Sarah had even introduced herself properly. "She's just shy. Teachers exaggerate things." But as Sarah walked through the home, she noticed Lily hovering in the hallway, peeking around corners, clutching a stuffed rabbit so tightly its ears were bent flat. The third conflict came in Sarah's own home. That night, while cooking dinner, Sarah's daughter Emily wandered into the kitchen with her own drawing from school. She'd made a crayon sketch of their house, bright, colorful, filled with little details like flowers and curtains in the windows. Sarah couldn't help but think of Lily's drawing. The stark difference between the warmth of Emily's and the coldness of Lily's gnawed at her. Children spoke volumes in ways adults often missed. On her second visit to the Bennets, Sarah noticed something that seemed trivial at the time: a locked basement door. Thomas brushed it off casually, saying he kept tools and dangerous chemicals down there. But the way his eyes lingered on Sarah as he said it, steady, unblinking, almost daring her to ask more, unsettled her. And once, while sitting in the living room with Lily, Sarah saw the girl's gaze drift toward that basement door. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but she stayed silent, staring until Thomas called her name sharply. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during an art therapy session at the center. Sarah gave Lily a set of colored pencils and asked her to draw her family again. This time, the drawing was different. The house was smaller. The unnamed figure was larger. And this time, Lily drew it inside the house, in the basement. Sarah's heart pounded as Lily quietly added bars over the basement window. When Sarah gently asked, "Who is that?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. Her reply was barely audible. "He lives down there." At first, Sarah thought Lily was speaking in metaphors, perhaps describing fear or a hidden trauma. But as she continued to ask careful, gentle questions, the truth began to unravel in pieces. Lily whispered that her dad told her never to go near the basement, that the person down there wasn't allowed outside, that sometimes, late at night, she could hear muffled sounds through the floorboards. The unnamed figure wasn't imaginary. Lily had been drawing someone real. Sarah reported her suspicions to the county authorities, but without concrete evidence, they were slow to act. Frustrated, she scheduled another visit. When she arrived at the Bennett home, Thomas was waiting at the door. His posture was rigid, his tone clipped. "You've been filling my daughter's head with nonsense," he snapped. "She doesn't need this. We don't need you." Sarah stood her ground. Lily deserves to be heard. Something is going on here, and if there's someone else in this house. His expression hardened. "Leave. Now." But just as Sarah turned to go, a faint sound drifted from beneath the floorboards. A hollow thump, followed by what sounded unmistakably like a voice. A desperate, muffled cry. Sarah froze. Her eyes darted toward the locked basement door. Thomas stepped forward quickly, blocking her view. His face was pale, jaw clenched tight. "I said, leave." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The sound of the muffled voice echoed in her ears. She replayed every detail in her mind. The bleach smell, the absent photographs, the barred basement window. Something, or someone, was in that house. And Lily knew it. She opened her laptop and began typing up a full report, attaching Lily's drawings as evidence. She would push this case further, no matter the resistance. Because deep down, she knew the child's crayon drawings weren't just art. They were cries for help. As dawn broke, Sarah whispered to herself, almost like a vow, "Whatever's in that basement, I'll find it." But she had no idea just how dangerous the truth would be. The report had been filed. Sarah thought she'd done everything right. Detailed notes, evidence from Lily's drawings, testimony from the teacher, and her own observations. Yet 2 weeks later, nothing had changed. Lily was still living in that house. Still sleeping above that locked basement. Still drawing the same dark figure. And Sarah couldn't shake the sound she'd heard that day. The muffled cry, the pounding beneath the floorboards. What, or who, was trapped in that basement? The county investigator, Agent Miller, reviewed Sarah's file but seemed unconvinced. "Children imagine things," he said flatly across the desk. They draw monsters. They hear noises. Without physical evidence, we can't break into a man's home. Think about the liability. Sarah's jaw clenched. Then what do you suggest? Wait until Lily disappears too. But Miller only closed the folder with a sigh. We'll keep an eye. That's all we can do for now. Sarah left the office with her chest burning. She knew what she'd heard. And she knew Lily wasn't imagining it. The breakthrough came not from the county, but from Lily herself. During their next art session, Sarah noticed something different. Instead of drawing the house, Lily drew a small square room. The walls were gray. Inside was the same dark figure, but this time Lily added a detail she never had before: a chain around the figure's ankle. Sarah swallowed hard. Lily, where did you see that? The little girl looked down at her shoes. Sometimes, when Daddy forgets to lock the door. The words landed like a stone in Sarah's stomach. That night, unable to let it go, Sarah drove past the Bennett home. It was nearly midnight. The street was dark, save for a single dim light glowing in the basement window. She parked a few houses down, watching, listening. At first, nothing, just the chirping of crickets. But then, faintly, she heard it again. The sound she could never forget. A voice, weak, almost broken, but unmistakably human. Help me. Her breath caught. She stepped out of her car, heart pounding, and walked closer. But before she could get too near, the front door creaked open. Thomas Bennett stepped outside, cigarette in hand. He scanned the street. Sarah ducked behind a tree, barely breathing. After a moment, Thomas flicked the cigarette into the yard and disappeared back inside. The basement light went dark. The next day, Sarah confided in Mrs. Walsh, the teacher. She needed someone else to witness what she was seeing, to confirm she wasn't losing her mind. I swear, Diane, Sarah whispered urgently in the empty classroom. There's someone down there. Lily knows it. I heard them. Mrs. Walsh frowned. If that's true, then it's not just neglect. It's something much worse. Together, they began quietly gathering records. Thomas Bennett's work hours, utility bills, anything that might prove someone else was living in that house. And that's when they found it. Electricity usage, abnormally high, especially at night. Water bills, spiking every month. As though someone else was inside, unseen. Sarah's determination grew sharper. She arranged another unannounced home visit, this time bringing Mrs. Walsh under the guise of a school partnership. Thomas answered the door, visibly irritated. Again? How many times do I have to tell you people? But then Lily appeared in the hallway. For the first time, she ran forward, clinging to Sarah's arm. Her small hands gripped tightly, trembling. Please don't go, she whispered. Thomas's jaw tightened. His eyes flashed with something Sarah hadn't seen before, fear. And in that moment, from the basement, came a sudden, violent crash. A man's voice, hoarse and desperate, roared through the floorboards. Let me out. Mrs. Walsh gasped. Sarah's heart leapt into her throat. Thomas moved quickly, slamming the basement door shut, fumbling with the lock. There's nothing down there, he barked, sweat beading on his forehead. But it was too late. Both women had heard it. Sarah's voice shook. Who is he? Thomas's face hardened. He pointed to the door. Get out. Now. Lily clung tighter, tears streaming down her cheeks. Don't leave me, Miss Sarah. Please, don't leave. For a moment, Sarah considered grabbing Lily and running. But Thomas loomed over them, his fists clenched, his frame blocking the exit. I said, get out. Mrs. Walsh pulled Sarah by the arm. With Lily crying behind them, they retreated out the door. The lock clicked shut behind them. In the car, Mrs. Walsh's hands trembled on the steering wheel. "Sarah," that was a man's voice. "There's someone in that basement." Sarah nodded, her own breath shaky. Now they can't ignore this. We both heard it. That night, she compiled everything, the bills, the drawings, the direct testimony. For the first time, she felt certain they were close to saving Lily. But Thomas Bennett was watching. From his window, he saw Sarah's car pull away. His expression darkened. And downstairs, in the darkness of the basement, the chained figure whispered weakly into the silence, "Please, hurry." The next morning, Sarah arrived at her office early, determined to call Agent Miller again. But when she opened the door, her breath caught in her throat. On her desk sat a single sheet of paper. No envelope, no explanation, just a child's crayon drawing. It was Lily's house. But this time, the stick figure labeled Miss Sarah was standing beside the dark figure, trapped inside the basement. Sarah's hands shook violently as she looked around the empty office. Someone had been here, and someone was sending her a warning. The crayon drawing shouldn't have been there. Sarah stared at it on her desk, her stomach twisting. Lily's familiar handwriting scrawled Miss Sarah beside a stick figure, not outside the home this time, but locked inside the basement. Someone had been in her office. Someone wanted her to know she was next. And suddenly, the case wasn't just about saving Lily anymore. It was about survival. That day, Sarah couldn't focus. She double-checked her locks, scanned faces in the parking lot, jumped every time the phone rang. She told Agent Miller about the drawing, her voice tight with urgency. But he only frowned. Could have been a prank. Kids do strange things. Sarah slammed her hand on the desk. A prank? You think an 8-year-old sneaks into a government office and leaves a drawing that matches every fear she's ever expressed? This is a threat. Miller's expression hardened. You need to step back, Sarah. You're getting too close. His words cut sharper than intended. But the doubt in his eyes was unmistakable. That night, Sarah tucked her daughter Emily into bed. "Mommy," Emily whispered, "there was a man outside my window earlier. I saw him." Sarah's heart dropped. She rushed to the window, flung it open. The yard was empty, the street silent. Just the faint smell of cigarette smoke drifting on the breeze. She closed the blinds quickly, her hands trembling. Thomas. It had to be Thomas. Watching. Warning. Desperate. Sarah turned to Mrs. Walsh. Together, they agreed, if the county wouldn't act, they had to find proof themselves. Mrs. Walsh hesitated. "You mean, go back? Break in?" Sarah's voice was low, steady. "If we don't, Lily's going to grow up in that house with chains rattling beneath her feet. I can't live with that." Mrs. Walsh's eyes filled with fear, but also resolve. "Then we'll go together." It was past midnight when Sarah and Mrs. Walsh parked 2 blocks away from the Bennett home. The night was thick with silence, broken only by the chirp of crickets. They crept through the backyard, their flashlights dimmed to pinpoints. The basement window was low to the ground, covered in grime. Sarah knelt, her breath shallow. She wiped the glass with her sleeve. Inside, she saw only darkness at first. But then, movement. A shadow shifting. She tapped gently. A face appeared. Gaunt. Pale. Eyes wide with desperation. A man. His lips moved silently before his voice finally reached her ears in a rasping whisper. "Help me." Mrs. Walsh gasped, clutching Sarah's arm. Sarah swallowed hard. "We're going to get you out. Who are you?" The man's eyes darted nervously. He shook his head, mouthing a single word. Brother. Before Sarah could process it, a light snapped on inside the house. Thomas. The sound of footsteps thundered across the floorboards above. Go, go. Sarah hissed, yanking Mrs. Walsh back toward the yard. They scrambled over the fence, hearts pounding, just as the back door creaked open. From the shadows, they saw Thomas step outside, scanning the yard with that same cold stare. A cigarette dangled from his lips. He knew someone had been there. Back in Sarah's car, Mrs. Walsh's voice trembled. He said, brother. Sarah, what does that mean? Sarah's mind raced. Thomas's brother? A family secret? Why would he chain him in the basement? She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. It means this isn't just abuse. This is something much bigger. The next day, Sarah tried again to confront Agent Miller with what she'd seen. But instead of relief or support, she caught something strange in his eyes. Hesitation. Almost recognition. Miller, she pressed. There's a man down there. He said he's Thomas's brother. We have to act now. But Miller leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. His tone was calm. Too calm. Careful, Sarah. You don't know what you're stepping into. Her stomach sank. Was Miller hiding something? That evening, as Sarah pulled into her driveway, her headlights caught something. Her front door was ajar. Panic surged through her. She rushed inside, calling for Emily. Emily. Honey, where are you? The house was silent, too silent. A lamp lay knocked over, papers scattered across the floor. Then she saw it. On the kitchen table sat another crayon drawing. This one showed two stick figures inside the basement. One labeled brother, and the other labeled Emily. Sarah's blood ran cold. Emily was gone. The drawing on the kitchen table was like a knife to the chest. Emily, Sarah's own daughter, had been drawn inside the basement, next to the figure labeled brother. And Emily herself was nowhere to be found. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears. Her worst fear had just become reality. The case had crossed the line. Now it wasn't just about Lily. It was about saving her own child. Sarah tore through the house, calling Emily's name. Upstairs, closets, bathroom, empty. Panic clawed up her throat. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. My daughter's missing. Please, she's only 9. Someone took her. The dispatcher's voice was calm, too calm. We'll send a unit. Can you think of anyone? Yes. Sarah cut her off. Thomas Bennett. It's him. Please, you have to hurry. But even as she spoke, she knew the system would move too slowly. By the time officers arrived, Emily could be long gone. Moments later, Sarah's phone buzzed again. A private number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello. A man's voice rasped through the line. Cold. Familiar. You should have stayed out of it. Her blood froze. Thomas. There was silence, then a low chuckle. She's safe. For now. But if you want to see her again, you'll stop digging. Let me talk to her. Sarah shouted. The line went dead. Sarah collapsed against the wall, her breath ragged. Her hands shook as she clutched the phone. Tears burned her eyes, but fury rose beneath the fear. She whispered to herself, almost like a vow, "You picked the wrong child." She called Mrs. Walsh immediately, her voice frantic. Within minutes, the teacher was at her door, still in her nightclothes. "We'll find her," Mrs. Walsh said firmly, though her hands trembled. "We'll get Emily back." They drove to the Bennett home under cover of night. The house loomed dark against the street lamps, blinds drawn tight. Sarah spotted Lily's silhouette in the upstairs window, her little hands pressed against the glass. "She knows," Sarah whispered. "She knows where Emily is." Mrs. Walsh hesitated. "If Thomas is inside, this could get us both killed." Sarah's jaw set. "Then we don't knock." Through a whispered plan, they managed to catch Lily's attention from the yard. Sarah held up her phone flashlight, flickering it 3 times. Slowly, Lily disappeared from the window, then reappeared moments later, holding a sheet of paper against the glass. On it, scrawled in crayon, "Basement. She's there." Sarah's heart lurched. Emily was inside the house. Just as Sarah was about to signal back, the front porch light snapped on. Thomas stepped out, scanning the street, a shotgun casually resting against his shoulder. Sarah and Mrs. Walsh ducked into the shadows, barely breathing. Thomas's voice carried into the night. "I know you're out here." Silence stretched. Then he smirked, spit into the grass, and went back inside. The door slammed shut. Sarah's whole body trembled with adrenaline. She turned to Mrs. Walsh. "I'm not waiting for the police. My daughter is in that basement." Mrs. Walsh's face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Then we go in. Now." They circled to the back. Sarah pried at the basement window with a crowbar from her trunk. The wood frame groaned. The glass rattled. Finally, it cracked open just enough for them to slip inside. The basement air was damp, heavy with the smell of mildew and rust. Chains rattled faintly in the shadows. And then they saw them. 2 figures. One was the gaunt man Sarah had seen before, slumped against the wall, his ankle chained. The other was Emily, her wrists bound with rope, her eyes wide with terror. "Mom!" she cried, her voice muffled by a gag. Sarah's knees nearly gave way. She rushed forward, fumbling with the knots, tears streaming down her face. "It's okay, baby. I've got you. Mommy's here." The chained man lifted his head weakly. His voice was raw, rasping. Don't just save her. He'll kill us both." Sarah looked at him fully for the first time, and her breath caught. The resemblance was uncanny. Same eyes, same jawline. It wasn't just Thomas's brother. It was his twin. Before Sarah could speak, the basement door above them creaked open. Heavy boots clamped down the steps. Thomas's voice growled through the shadows. "Welcome to my home, Sarah." The shotgun clicked as he stepped into view, blocking the only way out. Sarah pulled Emily close, her heart pounding. And in that moment, she realized there would be no talking her way out of this. The basement air was suffocating. Sarah clutched Emily to her chest as Thomas descended the steps, shotgun in hand, eyes glowing with something far darker than rage. Behind her, the chained man, Thomas's twin brother, stared helplessly, his breath shallow. "Welcome to my home, Sarah," Thomas repeated, his voice steady, almost calm. "You should have walked away when you had the chance." The cold barrel of the shotgun gleamed under the single swinging bulb. There was no way out. Sarah's voice trembled, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "She's just a child, Thomas. Let Emily go." He smirked, shaking his head slowly. "You think you're different, don't you? Marching in here, acting like a savior. But you don't understand. You don't know what he did." He jabbed the barrel toward the chained twin. Sarah's eyes flicked between them. The resemblance was undeniable. But what was the truth? Thomas's words poured out like venom. "He's not innocent. He's dangerous. He always has been. I locked him down here to protect everyone else." The twin rasped weakly, his voice cracking. "Lies. He's been keeping me here for years, telling people I was dead." Thomas's jaw clenched, his tone rising. "Shut up. You don't get to speak." The sound of the shotgun cocking echoed like thunder in the small room. Emily whimpered, burying her face into Sarah's chest. Sarah swallowed hard, her mind racing. "You don't have to do this, Thomas," she said, her voice softer now. "You want control, but this isn't control, it's madness. Think of Lily. She deserves a father, not a monster." For the briefest moment, something flickered in his expression. Doubt, conflict, but then his eyes hardened again. "No, you don't get to use her name." He raised the shotgun. Instinct took over. Sarah shoved Emily behind her and lunged at Thomas. The gun went off, the deafening blast shaking the basement. The bullet tore into the ceiling, showering them with dust and splinters. Mrs. Walsh, who had crept in through the window behind them, screamed. She hurled a heavy wrench from the workbench, striking Thomas's arm. The gun clattered to the ground. Chaos erupted. Sarah kicked the shotgun across the floor, but Thomas tackled her, his fists slamming into her shoulders as she fought to breathe. "Stay out of this," he roared. In the struggle, Emily scrambled to the chained man, fumbling with the lock at his ankle. "Please, help us," she cried. His hands shook as he tried to guide her. "The key, it's on the wall. Over there." Mrs. Walsh darted across the room, spotting a ring of keys hanging by a nail. She grabbed them and tossed them toward Emily. But before the twin could be freed, Thomas ripped Sarah off him and slammed her against the wall. His hand wrapped around her throat. "You think you're saving her?" he hissed. "You're just another problem to bury." Sarah's vision blurred as his grip tightened. Her hands flailed desperately, searching for anything to strike him with. Her fingers brushed cold metal, the wrench Mrs. Walsh had thrown earlier. With the last of her strength, she swung it. Hard. The crack of metal against bone rang out. Thomas staggered back, blood trickling from his temple. Sarah gasped for air, clutching her throat. Emily rushed to her side, sobbing. The twins seized the moment, shouting, "Now! Unlock me!" Mrs. Walsh fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking uncontrollably. One by one, she tried them in the rusted padlock. Finally, it clicked open. The chain fell to the floor. The twin rose unsteadily, his eyes locked on Thomas. Thomas, still reeling, reached for the shotgun on the floor. The twin lunged. Sarah screamed. The room erupted into chaos again as the shotgun discharged a second time, the blast reverberating through the basement. Smoke filled the air. When it cleared, someone was lying motionless on the concrete. But in the haze and panic, Sarah couldn't tell who had been shot. The gunshot echoed like a thunderclap, rattling the pipes, drowning the basement in smoke. Sarah's ears rang. Her vision swam. She clutched Emily tight, heart hammering as the acrid smell of gunpowder burned her throat. When the haze thinned, she saw him, on the ground, motionless. But it wasn't Thomas. It was his twin. Blood seeped across the cracked concrete, pooling around the gaunt man's chest. His eyes fluttered weakly, lips trembling as though trying to form words. "No!" Sarah cried, rushing forward. She pressed her hands against the wound, desperate to stop the bleeding. The twin grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. His voice was hoarse, each word scraped from his lungs. "Take Lily away from him." His hand went slack. His chest stilled. Sarah's stomach lurched. She looked up and froze. Thomas was standing tall again, the shotgun back in his grip, a twisted smile cutting across his blooded face. "You saved me the trouble," he sneered. "I was getting tired of babysitting him anyway." Emily screamed, clinging to Sarah's arm. Mrs. Walsh backed toward the wall, her face pale with shock. Sarah's voice cracked with fury. "You murdered your own brother." Thomas tilted his head. "Brother?" He chuckled darkly. "You still don't get it." He leaned down, his eyes burning into Sarah's. "He wasn't my brother. He was the mistake." The words hung in the air like a blade. Sarah's breath caught. "What? What are you talking about?" Thomas smirked. "My parents never told anyone. There were two of us. But one was sick. Broken. They wanted him gone. I made sure he stayed gone." He tapped the shotgun against his palm, the sound sharp, deliberate. "And now, no one will ever know he existed." Emily sobbed. Mrs. Walsh whispered, horrified, "My God, you've been hiding him since you were children." Thomas's grin widened. "And you're next." Sarah's pulse surged. She grabbed the nearest object, a rusted pipe from the floor, and swung it with all her strength. The blow connected with Thomas's shoulder. He stumbled, the shotgun slipping from his grip. "Run!" Sarah shouted. Emily bolted toward Mrs. Walsh, who grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the basement window. Thomas roared in rage, lunging after them. He slammed Sarah into the wall again, pinning her with terrifying strength. "You don't get to leave," he hissed. Mrs. Walsh shoved Emily through the narrow basement window first. The little girl scrambled out into the night air, her cries echoing in the yard. "Go, Emily! Run!" Sarah shouted. But before Mrs. Walsh could climb out herself, Thomas ripped her backward by the hair and hurled her against the floor. The sickening thud of her head hitting concrete echoed through the basement. She went limp. Sarah screamed, struggling against his grip. "You're insane," she spat. Thomas leaned close, his breath hot against her ear. "No, I'm free. And soon, you'll understand why I can't let you leave." Upstairs, the front door burst open. Heavy boots thundered across the wooden floor. A voice shouted down into the basement. "Police! Drop the weapon!" Sarah's eyes widened. Relief surged, but it vanished in an instant. Because when Thomas turned, shotgun in hand, his lips curled into a smirk. And the man leading the charge down the stairs was none other than Agent Miller. Not with his gun raised at Thomas, but aimed directly at Sarah. The basement seemed to tilt, shadows stretching unnaturally as Sarah froze. Thomas, the shotgun clutched in his hands, grinned like a predator savoring the kill. But Sarah wasn't looking at him anymore. Her eyes locked on the figure descending the stairs. Agent Miller. And his gun wasn't aimed at Thomas. It was aimed at her. "What?" Sarah stammered, chest heaving. "What are you doing?" Emily, still just outside the basement window, screamed, "No, he's supposed to help us." Thomas laughed, low and guttural. "Oh, she still doesn't know, Miller. Tell her. Go on." Miller's eyes were ice. He didn't lower the gun. His voice cut through the room. "You've interfered long enough, Sarah. You should have just filed your little report and walked away." Sarah's blood ran cold. The realization hit like a punch. Miller wasn't here to save them. He was part of this. Sarah's voice trembled with anger. "You've been protecting him this whole time." Miller tilted his head. "Not protecting. Containing. You think men like Thomas just slip through the cracks of the system by accident? No. He's useful." Mrs. Walsh groaned weakly on the floor, clutching her head. "You're monsters, both of you." Miller barely glanced at her. "Collateral." Thomas smirked. "Told you no one would believe you, Sarah. You can't fight people like us. We decide who gets silenced." The room crackled with tension. Sarah could feel Emily's sobs from outside the window, each one fueling her resolve. And then, something shifted. The dead twins' words echoed in Sarah's mind. "Take Lily away from him." Her eyes darted to Emily. The child was shaking, but her eyes, those bright blue eyes, were locked on Sarah with desperate trust. Sarah inhaled deeply, steadying her voice. "You're wrong, Thomas. Both of you are. You don't decide who lives in fear." Thomas chuckled, raising the shotgun. "Oh, I think I do." But before he could pull the trigger, Emily screamed, "Mom, behind you!" Sarah ducked. Mrs. Walsh, barely conscious, had crawled across the floor and yanked Miller's ankle with the last of her strength. His shot went wild, ricocheting off the basement wall. In that split second of chaos, Sarah lunged at Thomas. She grabbed the barrel of the shotgun and shoved it upward, the blast shaking the ceiling above. The basement exploded in sound and fury. Thomas snarled, grappling with Sarah for control. "You can't win." Sarah's muscles burned, but something deep inside pushed her beyond fear. She thought of Emily, of every child like her who needed someone to fight when no one else would. With a scream, Sarah jammed the rusted pipe she still held into Thomas's ribs. He howled, stumbling backward. Miller raised his gun again, aiming at Sarah's chest. But before he could fire, a deafening bang. Miller's body jerked. His weapon clattered to the floor. Behind him, silhouetted in the stairwell, stood a cluster of uniformed officers, guns drawn. One of them had fired the saving shot. "Drop the weapon," a voice thundered. Thomas froze, cornered at last. For the first time, his smirk faltered. Minutes later, Thomas was in cuffs, screaming obscenities as officers dragged him out. Miller lay motionless on the basement floor. The corruption that had shielded Thomas finally ended. Sarah sat on the cold concrete, trembling as Emily rushed back into her arms. She held the girl tight, burying her face in her hair. "You're safe now," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're safe." Mrs. Walsh, pale but alive, leaned against the wall and gave Sarah a faint smile. "You didn't just save her. You saved yourself." Weeks later, Sarah stood outside the courthouse where Thomas's trial was being held. Emily had been placed with a foster family who adored her, and for the first time, the little girl was beginning to laugh again. Sarah knew she would carry the scars of that night forever. But she also knew something else, something stronger than the fear. She had learned that evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it hides behind authority, behind a badge, behind a smile. But it can be defeated, not with power, but with courage. She looked at Emily, who waved from the car window as her new family drove away. Sarah whispered to herself, "Sometimes the smallest voices carry the heaviest truths. And it's our job to listen, no matter how dangerous the silence may be." Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important than fear. When authority is abused, silence becomes its accomplice. Speak, even when your voice trembles. The scars we carry are not signs of weakness, they are proof that we survived. Children rarely lie about their pain. Believe them before it's too late. The measure of a life is not how safe we played it, but how bravely we stood when someone needed us most. And with that, Sarah walked away from the courthouse, carrying not only her own healing, but the hope that Emily, and countless children like her, might finally have a chance to live without fear.
Some cases find justice, others are left in silence. But together, we can keep their stories alive. If you felt the weight of this mystery, make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell, so you'll always be here when the next truth surfaces. Every voice matters. Every story counts. Step closer, behind the crime,